And this makes Feyre go, oh, hold on a minute. Something's happened. Some things are happening. I'm gonna pack up my stuff and try and get myself back to the Spring Court. Fortunately for Feyre, she's crossed the Vale before, so she manages to do it again. She makes her way back to the Spring Court to find the entire place has just been ransacked. It's all practically empty. The only person Feyre can properly find to talk to is Alice, who's a real one. And this is where Alice decides to tell Feyre the truth about what's been going on. Queen Amarantha came over from the Isle of Hybern as an emissary of the King of Hybern 100 years ago. She and her sister Clythia fought in the Mortal War until Clythia fell in love with a human soldier called Durian who betrayed her. And Amarantha has hated humans ever since. Which, I'm not gonna lie, unpopular opinion, but I get where Amarantha's coming from. I think the death of her sister is a pretty good motivation for becoming evil or being an evil person. Problem is, she kind of was evil before that, but this definitely sends her over the edge. Turns out Amarantha came over without the king's permission with the aim of taking over Prythian and ruling it herself. She has managed to enslave the Fae in Prythian for the last 49 years by tricking all of the High Lords into giving her a little piece of their magic. So they're all under her control. They're basically slaves. And Alice reveals that Feyre could have freed all of the Fae in Prythian because a curse was put on Tamlin's court when he refused to become Amarantha's lover and actually her official consort. He rejected her, so Amarantha put a curse on his court and said that he had to find a human girl who hated Fae and get her to fall in love with him. And that if he managed to do that within 50 years, everyone in Prythian would be free from her evil spell. Turns out all of the Fae in the Spring Court were forbidden from talking about it, magically forbidden, so Alice couldn't really tell her until now. So the big reveal is that all Feyre had to do was tell Tamlin she'd fallen in love with him, and the spell over everyone would have been broken. She was so close to freeing everybody, and Tamlin didn't know. So Feyre asks Alice to take her to wherever Amarantha is, because obviously Tamlin is some kind of prisoner now, and Alice goes to try and tell her something else, but she literally can't. But Feyre makes her way under the mountain. This is where Amarantha has basically the Fae of all the courts trapped underground with her in this evil court. And when Feyre gets there, Tamlin pretends to not know her because he doesn't want Amarantha to know, oh no, this is the human that nearly broke your spell. AKA, this is the human that I'm really into way more than I'm into you, crazy, crazy, scary lady. But Feyre comes in and says, look, I am the human involved in the spell you've made, and I love Tamlin. And Feyre thinks that that's going to be enough, but Amarantha's like, well, you've got to prove it then. So they make a deal where Feyre has to complete 3 tasks, 1 each month, to prove how much she loves Tamlin. If she manages to complete all 3 tasks, everyone gets to go free. Or there is a riddle Amarantha tells her, and if at any point she can answer the riddle, everyone's going to be free. Everyone will be free immediately. Thus begins the period known as Under the Mountain. When Feyre introduces herself, though, it is quite funny because Amarantha turns around to Rhysand, who is with her, and says, I thought you said the human's name was Claire Bedder. And it turns out they've got Claire Bedder, killed her and tortured her. She's like, you said this was the human. And Rhys is like, well, she said her name was Claire Bedder. And Amarantha's like, well, couldn't you tell by looking that this human is clearly not that human? And Rhysand's like, they all look the same to me. What are you talking about, Amarantha? They're just humans. And you know he's lying. And he is so concerned when he just sees her rock up. He's like, why does this girl want to die? Feyre's first task is fighting this giant worm. And as she's in this maze pit and the worm's tracking her to try and like eat her. You know that everyone up in the courts, they're all betting on how long she's going to stay alive for. And there's only one voice. It's mentioned specifically, there's only one person who bets on her, and that is Rhysand. And Feyre realizes that this worm, it's blind. So what she starts doing is covering herself in the dirt and the soil from the pit. And while everyone else is getting really confused, you've got Rhysand telling everybody she's just made herself invisible. Right. This is brilliant. And so he's the only one up there that's like kind of cheering her on, like, oh, go on, you can do it. And she basically makes a trap for the worm and it impales itself and she wins. And she is looking so grim at the end of it. She is really hurt. She like impales her arm and it's all bloody and everything. And Amarantha's like, good, great. Well done, you. See you in a month. And then they go and put her in a dungeon. Like they just go and leave her there. She is in desperate need of medical attention. Now, who do you think comes and sneaky visits Feyre down in the dungeons? It's Rhysand. And Rhysand makes her a deal. He says, Feyre, it looks like you have got that wound infected. You only have like a certain amount of time left alive. Your tiny human body can't look after itself. So I'll make you a deal. I'll heal your wound in exchange for 1 week of each month for the rest of your life. Now, obviously, Fey deals are binding. They are super duper serious. Feyre's like, and Rhys grabs her arm and she's like, ow. And he's like, you are going to die. Take the deal or die, basically. So she does. This means that if slash when they ever manage to escape the mountain, for the rest of her life, she is meant to spend 1 week out of every month with Rhysand, wherever he may be. What an interesting plot point for future books. And this deal, it's actually physically represented in a tattoo on her arm. For some reason, SJM's main characters, there's always tattoos involved. After that, there are parties going on in the mountain on different evenings, and they are pretty debauched and weird. But Rhysand insists that he wants Feyre to be his +1 and be his guest, and Amarantha's like, okay. Because if you can imagine, Rhysand is kind of Amarantha's consort at this point, but Tamlin's back now, and she's got Tamlin like sat next to her all the time, like he's stuck to her like glue. And so she's like, yeah, okay, Rhysand, whatever. And so he starts taking her to all these parties of an evening, but she gets super, but like he gives her all of this Fey wine, so she can't really remember like how bad everything is when she's at these parties, but she's spending a lot of weird time with Rhysand. And he kind of flaunts her in front of Tamlin because Tamlin just has to sit there next to Amarantha, and Rhys is like, I've got your girl. Those kind of vibes. Which you can imagine really winds Tamlin up because he's not even allowed to talk to Feyre. Her second task involves Lucian, who has been captured. And he's basically in a pit full of spikes, and the walls are getting closer and closer together. And Feyre simply has to answer a question and pull the lever that responds to the answer, which you think would be easy to do. But something we've been made aware of throughout the novel, all the way back when Tamlin set up Feyre's paint sets and all that lot in the library, is that Feyre does not know how to read. No one has ever taught Feyre to read. And so this particular task, Feyre cannot solve. And Lucian's just injured, lying in this pit with spikes coming down on him like, I'm gonna die because this dumb bitch can't read. And we find out that Feyre's new tattoo is actually a link with Rhysand, and he starts speaking to her in like her mind and it's like, pull that lever. And we love that. Basically, without Rhysand helping her cheat, she would not have passed task two, and Lucian would not be alive. Now, I'm pretty certain at this point Feyre's broken her arm, and we get to meet the lady of the Autumn Court, Lucian's mum, who pops on down. She might actually heal Lucian rather than her, but Feyre gets to meet Lucian's mum. And it's made very clear that Lucian's father is evil. He is not a nice guy, but Lucian's mum loves her baby, and she thanks Feyre for saving her son. Way more on just Lucian, full stop, plays into this series. Now, Rhysand kind of admits to Feyre that he's hoping she'll win. He wants her to complete the tasks and free everybody, and Rhysand is secretly hoping that Tamlin, once free, is gonna Amarantha. So it turns out even Amarantha's right-hand man is kind of doing what he can to get rid of this evil queen. And Feyre should be very grateful that Rhysand is on her side, because she would be dead by now if it wasn't for him. The one awful, awful night where Rhysand kind of creates a situation where Feyre and Tamlin are in a corridor together while the party's going on. And instead of taking Feyre and running away, Tamlin just kind of starts mauling her and kissing her, and they're making out. And Rhysand comes back in and is like, guys, you were meant to run away. Like, you are useless. And then he like shoves Tamlin out of the way and grabs Feyre and makes it look like he's kissing her because Amarantha comes in. And obviously he doesn't want Amarantha to know that he'd created a situation where Tamlin and Feyre were alone together. So he's like covering with the excuse that like, oh, I was just having some private time with the human. And Amarantha's like, oh, didn't know you were into the whole human thing, we said. Oh, and he manages to like cover for Tamlin being a moron. You know, Rhysand's like, you should have just run away. Screw everyone else. The two of you could have been all right together. But the best laid plans. Tamlin wasn't thinking like that. Now, Feyre's actually down in these dungeons, and she actually starts hearing music, you know, coming from somewhere else. And as she's laying there, that's what she clings to, this like little bit of beauty, a little bit of hope. Now, Feyre's third task comes around, and she has to kill 3 Fae. That's all she has to do. Amarantha lines up 3 Fae with these bags over their head, and the bags get ripped off, and she has to kill them. Now, it's really, really tough, but she does. She kills Fae number 1, like these just innocent people in front of her. She kills Fae number 2, and then the sack's taken off of Fae number 3, and it is Tamlin. And, you know, she's not quite sure what to do, but then all of these little mentionings from earlier on throughout the book start coming into her mind. They're all about, you know, Tamlin, he's really stone-hearted. And she starts thinking, what if that's literal? What if Tamlin, High Lord of Springcourt, literally has a heart made of stone, and that when I stab him, it's not going to kill him? So she literally takes on that gamble. Turns out it is, in fact, the fact that Alice was going to tell her before she walked through the tunnels, and Alice couldn't get it out of her mouth. They've been forbidden from telling Feyre, but she's overheard other people talking about it because Tamlin has created situations where she could overhear the words stone-hearted several times, just in case something like this cropped up. So she stabs Tamlin in the chest, and he's fine. He starts healing, and Amarantha is furious because basically no one can now deny Feyre loves Tamlin. And she's incensed, and she says, well, I said I'd free them. I just didn't say when. And you were like, oh my goodness. One of the classic things you're always told about making deals with Fae is that the wording is super important. And so everyone's like, well, she could just say, oh, in 1,000 years, I'll let you all be free. We could be trapped for ages and ages. And Amarantha starts breaking Feyre's bones one by one. She's like, snap, snap, snappity snap. Rhysand goes for Amarantha, and Amarantha turns to Rhysand and like bats him off. And as she's doing it, Feyre solves Amarantha's riddle. You know, the one that if Feyre solved it, it would set everyone immediately free. Because, to the surprise of literally no one, the answer to the riddle is just love. That's what the riddle is about. And the moment Feyre says, I know the answer to the riddle is love, the spell that's controlling everyone, broken instantly. And everyone runs into action, and Tamlin kills Amarantha. But Amarantha has broken Feyre's neck. Feyre's dead. Bet you didn't guess that was gonna happen. Feyre, MC, dead as a doorknob. And it's at this point, Feyre starts seeing everything like from a distance through the bond between her and Rhysand. So she's kind of seeing things from his POV. Tamlin is cradling her body, and Rhysand goes around to every High Lord and suggests, but also kind of demands, that they all give her a little piece of their power. Like collectively, the seven of them, they can bring her back to life if they all commit to doing so. And obviously, she has just freed everybody from Amarantha's spell. So all seven High Lords put a little bit of magic inside Feyre, and the bit of her soul, like her soul that's been caught in the bond with Rhysand, it goes back into her body, and she becomes a High Fae. She's no longer human. She comes back to life, and she is now Fae, like the rest of them. The book ends with like under the mountain, it's all destroyed. Everyone starts going home to their courts because obviously they've been trapped down there for years. And Feyre is just horrified because she's killed totally innocent people. She's now a murderer, and that's really traumatic. And she's been kept down in a dungeon and basically tortured for months. Homegirl's a wreck, but she is all set to go back to the Spring Court and be with the love of her life, Tamlin, High Lord of Spring. Just as the book ends, she and Rhysand say goodbye to each other. Rhysand sort of nods his head to her, brings his head back up, and just kind of startles a bit, and then disappears. And we end book one on that note. This new age for Prythian. All of the courts are going to have to get back up and running as they were. Everyone's going to have to return to life as normal for them. And Feyre is going to have to start off her new normal with Tamlin in the Spring Court, not forgetting that she has committed to spending 1 week every single month with Rhysand. And thus ends book one in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I love this one. I do not normally like a blonde guy, but Tamlin, Lucian, even Rhysand, I was a little bit like, oh, consider me intrigued by him. And it just gets better because Court of Mist and Fury, book two, one of the best books I've ever read. So stay tuned as we delve further into the Massiverse and look to summarize A Court of Mist and Fury, the second book in the ACOTAR series, in our next episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. And if you find these kind of videos interesting and you're enjoying the series, please like the video. Please comment your thoughts on what I've said. And make sure to subscribe to my channel. I know it's small, but we're growing. And share this with anyone you think is going to find it helpful. We are literally working our way through every Sarah J Maas book possible. And these take a lot of time to make. So please do what you can to spread the word of what we're doing here. Thank you so much for sitting and watching me talk. Hope I'll see you next time. See you later, alligators.